All right. Um, Actually, I just realized I never came up with a name for this. So,
Hey, let's do it right
okay.
now, right here.
All right. All right. What are we going to call it?
I don't know, Brad's Tech Talk, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome to Brad's Tech Talk or FRCS Tech Talk. Uh, to This is the podcast where we talk to business leaders and tech leaders and just learn how they're leveraging technology in their businesses for to make their lives easier or maybe to make their lives worse. I don't know. Today, I am happy to be joined by Rod Price. And Rod, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us what you
Hey,
do.
thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. And by the way, this is our first time actually, having sort of a, at least virtual face to face. We've been messaging back and forth. So, thank you for having me on. I'm honored and I'm excited. I love all the other work that you're doing. You're putting out there about, technology. I love the updates, by the way. So yeah, my name is Rod
Thanks.
Price. I live in Spokane. I'm I grew up like 50 miles north of Spokane, a little tiny town of Valley, Springdale area, that area. And yeah, so I am a business owner. I consider myself an entrepreneur. I did the whole corporate world for years and walked away from that about 5 years ago and haven't looked back. I mean, I'm still involved in the corporate world, but I'm doing it sort of on my own terms and just started I started consulting and coaching and consulting with executives, executive teams, and it just kind of morphed into everything I'm doing now. So
Right on. So can you tell us all what are you doing right now?
oh man. Yeah, so that have you seen that movie with Tom Cruise? It was like Live, Die, Repeat or whatever it is. Maybe
Yeah.
that was the tagline of the movie. I don't know, but I feel like I've been doing that, right? So go out there and I try something new. I get killed right away, so that I wake back up and I'm like, okay, all right, I learned something there. So I keep forward. So I'm doing really three things. I have three ventures going. My first one is my consulting business for, really which turned into a lot of it is energy development. So I had spent several years in the energy industry, and so I do development of large generation projects. So wind, solar, gas, mostly, and so I consult for a few companies that are developing large commercial scale projects and everything from siting the project, so location, siting, site analysis, community engagement, and project leadership, project oversight. So there's some large projects there. That's how I pay for everything else that I'm doing right now. So that's been going really well. And then I have my other business, which I started this little software company focused on creating a mental wellness ecosystem for veterans, first responders, and healthcare workers and their families. And so that's the North app that you and I have kind of talked about in the past, and that's gaining some ground now. So I'm, working on that, working on getting other people to help me continue building it, so I can keep doing the other stuff. And then I have this whole other consulting arm that I'm doing, writing a book with my business partner Carrie McCarter. We're many chapters into this draft, and it all has to do and the podcast, it all goes together as Peak Performing Life is our program. So yeah, so those three things. And some people join bands and do other things. I've just started, building companies.
I I uh I know how that is. Done the same kind of thing, started a business, learned a lot of stuff the hard way, and then started another business with a little bit of a leg up and so on and so forth. I've been there. I've been there. Now, about your energy consulting, I actually
Yeah.
didn't know that you did that. What do you consult? You consult on the more like where to build and what to build, or is it more like operations consulting?
All the above. It started off as the what they call siting. Whenever you have a project, so let's take a commercial wind development project. You have to, for a company that wants to develop or build a wind project, you need three things. You need there's got to be wind resources, right? So they sort of make the determination, hey, look, the wind resources are pretty good in this area. And then you have to have like willing landowners who are interested in having a wind project in their area, on their land, around. And then the third thing is access to transmission lines to carry that power to the people who are going to purchase it from the generator. And so, I spent several years at a utility company in Spokane, and mostly, I was hired there. I'm a Lean Six Sigma practitioner. I was hired there to start, what you would call operational excellence, process improvement, continuous improvement. Then I moved into their corporate real estate department and ran the corporate real estate department for years. And so that was all about site acquisition, site management, landowner communications, landowner engagement with the communities, things like that. So that's a lot of the work that I do. So I work with them specifically. Really, it's turned into this. It's what you would call an energy developer. A lot of companies have their own internal developers. I contract. I don't want to be an employee anymore. So, so really that, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but yeah. And so, it leads to the other stuff probably that, you've talked about, we're going to talk about, which is, AI development, because really there's this huge gap. I just attended this energy summit on the West Side a couple weeks ago. And, there's just where Washington State is not there's not a crisis coming. It's already in a crisis. There's this gap between the generation that's needed and the load that is being demanded right now. And so that's what's going on. It's good for new energy development and generation, but our transmission system, our grid is sorely undercapacitated. So yeah, we can generate a bunch of power over here on the east side of the mountains. We can't get it to the west side. So, yeah, interesting. Anyways, so that's what I do, is work with companies on everything from, like I said, community engagement, tribal engagement, siting, contracts, yeah, interconnection, all of that. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that problem that you're talking about in Washington, do you think that is because of the AI development and data centers being built and that sort of thing, or is that some other sort of stress on the grid that is causing that problem?
It's a great question. And, people think that AI development and data centers are the sole reason we either have or are going to have, uh, more than likely some rolling blackouts in Washington State. Really, what it is, it's two things. Three things. Washington State is through the governor implemented the Clean Energy Transformation Act, which meant that energy generation had to be 100% carbon free or carbon neutral by, I think, 2045, right? So that means companies couldn't build any more gas generation projects. Coal's going away, coal generation, electricity coming into the state going away. And so you have this degradation of generation opportunities because nuclear was so out, in terms of permitting and cost and everything else. So the next alternative is renewable energy, which is great. I'm agnostic when it comes to energy generation. I'm not a big coal guy. I think coal is dirty, but the rest of it, we need it. So you have this decrease in or not decrease in generation, but yeah, decrease in generation. But then you have the electrification of everything. So you have electric cars, everything going electric. And the reduction of like gas furnaces, right? You can't, you trying to install a gas furnace is here on the east side, it's not too bad, but the farther you go west, the harder it gets. But anyways, electrification, everything. So you've got that, and then you so you have we don't have enough generation in Washington State. There's an imbalance there. The demand keeps increasing, and then you have just the capacity to carry that energy. So those three things are what leading to this problem. Getting from the east side, we've I'm working on 3 projects that are over a gigawatt of new generation in this region, and, um, we we can't get it to the west side. So,
Huh.
yeah, so I
Is
think that's created the problem.
is the problem getting it to the west side? Is it the mountain range and it's difficult to have transmission lines over there? Or there's just not enough room to build power plants on the west side, or
Again, I think, not to get too deep into it, but I think, the west side, I don't want it to be an us versus them thing. The west side, it's an interesting place. Very, very pro renewable carbon free energy, but not in my backyard. And so trying to get a wind farm on the west side, they have them over there, but you also have, just due to density uh, of communities, it's hard to get, site a project over there anyways. You need wide open spaces. They have them. Um, but you're not going to build solar over on the west side, right? Because you're going to get a trickle charge if you're lucky. Um, but so you've got those two issues, and then it's really, but we've got great capacity over here to generate, but it's not just the mountains, it's everything. It's permitting. Washington State is very difficult to permit in. They're working on that to improve that, but I mean that's got to change drastically. And what I mean by permitting is we've got transmission lines. Bonneville Power has transmission lines, Puget Sound Energy, Pacific Core. There are lines that going east and west, but they're at maximum capacity. So they're trying to rebuild them. You've got to go through all these studies. You've got to go, do all this other stuff. But then you've got to have, the rights of way, the easements or the rights of way that allow you to go through private and state and federal property, tribal property. Those rights are set for the lines that are there. So you have to re-permit whatever you're going to build. So the permitting is years. I mean, it's just the permitting is ridiculous. And that's been a huge problem.
hmm,
And then
hmm.
Bonneville Power is a government agency, and you know, they're really going through some challenges. They have been for a number of years, and they continue to just suffer challenges. And so it's it's kind of a perfect storm of everything, really, Brad. I mean, not just one thing. Yeah, I wish if it were just one thing, that could be solved quickly. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I grew up in Walla Walla, and so we had wind farms everywhere, but we had big, wide open spaces.
yeah,
Like between Ritzville and Walla Walla, there's nothing.
right.
So, uh,
Well, and yeah, so I'm here in Eastern Washington, and we have wide open spaces. But a lot of the wide open spaces, the farther west you go towards Central Washington, you've got you have problems with FAA, military training routes. So the DoD, FAA have to get involved. All that, there are all these stakeholders involved if you want to build a project, and because you got wind towers, anywhere from 500 to 750 feet high in the tip of the blade when it's, vertical. It's an interesting world. 5 years ago, when I said, well, I'm going to go do something different, if you would have told me then that, hey, you're going to be working on, wind farms and gas generation and, solar, and I'm not really working on solar right now, but I always said, no, I'm not doing that. Forget that. But it's really interesting, and it's exciting time in the energy industry for sure. And again, the whole thing about the technology is how we're using technology. We've gone from using, yep, engineers and people, humans, to do all the calculations, to do all the site analysis, to now there are these new AI models out there that cut that analysis down to minutes and, maybe an hour instead of, months. So,
Wow. So leveraging these AI models, how do they kind of work through? Um, I guess how do you use the AI models to help solve these problems?
yeah. So, eh, one of the things when you build a project is you have to analyze the transmission system itself, right? So it's, you don't just place your new generation into a substation and then they carry it and it just keeps going. There's the you have a maximum kilovoltage for transmission lines that they were built for, right? So usually you see the stuff that you see 115 kilovolts, or 230 kilovolts, or 500 kilovolts. So you have these. Oh, 115 kilovolts is a lot, but but when it's already maxed out, so it's not just from here to there. You've got to take into account all the other substations, all the other users of the power, and all the other people putting the power. It's a very complex, and I won't even begin to make it sound like I completely understand all of that, because that's why we have electrical engineers. But it's the electrical engineers that are doing that analysis, and they, they're just 10 times smarter than I am. And it's fun to sit in on the meetings, and they're talking about things, and I understand probably 70% of everything that's going on, but there's that 30% where I'm making notes and I'm looking it up later trying to figure out, now what did they just, but so you've got to have, it's like any AI, right? You got to be able to input the right information, because it's garbage in, garbage out, as you know.
Mhm.
But so they're feeding that information into models, where, the AI technology has been developed specifically for that, to more accurately analyze and quickly analyze the capacity of a transmission, grid system, to be able to take power on or not, and also kind of project what it's going to look like down the road too. So, yeah, I don't know if that
Hmm.
answers your question or not, but
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I could get, yeah, careful. I can geek out really fast. So,
Hey, that's what this is. That's what I want this to be, is just geeking
yeah,
out and
yeah, okay,
learning. So,
yeah,
um, since we're on the topic of AI, do you want to
yeah.
talk about Ethos and the North app?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was hoping you'd ask. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Ethos, Ithos. Everybody says, why with an I? So, well, because there are too many companies with an E, Ethos, but it means the same thing, and it's a play, it's a phonetic, ethos, play on that. But originally started with a different company name, and it was too long, and it didn't really sum up what I think what we're about, what the company's about. And but I started this with the so when I was consulting before I got into the energy stuff, I was doing a lot of work with, in the mental health field. So I helped run a mental health telehealth company on the west side, and ran their operations, worked on operational excellence, things like that for the company. And one of the things I found out is that they had this pretty cool system. Well, their philosophy was to do a thorough intake interview with, like, a person who's seeking therapy, and you got the person looking for therapy and the person that provides therapy. And therapists are amazing people. I've good friends, one is my business partner, my other business, and they're smart, they're amazing, they're compassionate, but a lot of them are not great business people, and it's because they just didn't. That's not the environment they grew up in or went to school in. So many are, but most aren't. So I found myself consulting for therapists, private practice providers, things like that. But in this company that I was working with, I learned that there's this huge gap between the number of people, I mean, the astounding number of people looking for some type of therapy for themselves or a family member or loved one, and the therapists who want to do therapy. Therapists just want to do therapy. That's why they went to school. That's their mission, is just to do therapy. They're typically not good at, I don't want to say good at, but marketing, right? Going out and marketing and networking is fun, but you've got to get clients. That's how you make your money. And you can sign and they sign up for insurance. I forget the name of it, but they get on the list of insurance companies and EAPs, employee assistance programs. But again, there's this flow of leads that come into them, people that come into them, but they're not qualified. Not every therapist does everything. Most specialize, and the therapists out there, they say, I don't work with children, and I'll work with couples, but not if they're going through, like, getting ready for divorce, things like that. They're very specific on who, or some people just like, I just want to work with people who are of Asian, descent, cultures, and I speak, several languages, and I just want to work with those people, or I want, so they specialize. And anyways, so there's this huge gap. And the thing that I learned is that, on average, when a person is looking for therapy, it takes so much. It takes about 20 outreaches on their part before they get one provider or provider office to actually respond to them. So think about that. So typical, let's say you work for a company and they've got Premier Blue Cross, you got great insurance, but you're like, okay, my 14-year-old son or daughter needs, or I need, whatever, right? So first thing they do is they go on to Primera's provider list, right? They log in, they've got they get the provider, they look up, oh, I'm looking for, well, psychology. They don't even know what they're looking for, right? Psychologist, counseling. And so they go through this process. Then they get this grocery list or laundry list of therapists, and they they have to start calling and email and all that, and get voicemail, and nobody returns your voicemail call, emails, things like that. There's this whole thing. Every time I talk to somebody about this, they say, oh yeah, that's happened. I gave up, or they gave up. I keep hearing that. Well, I gave up because it was too hard. I did personally, right? So the same thing. So I went, okay, this is a problem. We were applying a human-centered approach to it, where we had people on staff who were like, had degrees in psychology, like bachelor's degrees in psychology, maybe pursuing their master's. And so they were doing intake, but that's very labor intensive, still slow. Anyways, so I went, there's got to be a better way. And then as AI started to emerge about 3 years ago, I said, oh, okay, let's start using AI. And that's kind of where this came from. And then as I was working through this, I said, okay, my passion, I'm a veteran, and I've interacted with so many fellow veterans, and I'm a first responder too. I was a EMT, worked in the ER, all of that. I get it. I understand, I've got a veteran's perspective and a first responder's perspective, and I get it. And so I said, you've got to help our veterans. And that's kind of how this came about. I said, okay, let's get a platform out there that, the original was just a platform that will connect people looking for therapy with licensed providers, and but do it in a way that there's this matching that goes on. So there's got AI, right? Using artificial intelligence. Now we can start to capture this information, and the artificial intelligence, the AI, is now starting to create this match between therapists who are in the system, and have their profiles built, and then the clients, the users that have their profiles, their information in there. What happens is, a lot of times you call, you get your appointment, you have your first meeting with a therapist, and you're kind of like, you know, there I'll keep going, but it just doesn't feel like it's a match. And even the therapist is kind of going, well, I'll do this because, hey, I'm getting paid to do it. They're paying me to do it. Okay. But there's not this compatibility. There was this mismatch all the time. So you have less successful experiences, and maybe they only meet 3, 4 times. And then they don't stop meeting because they're like, hey, I'm all better. They stop meeting because they're like, oh man, there's no value, right? Because we don't match. So what we're doing is creating a better match using, it's like, what's the number one, matching, program out there? I forget what it is, like Match.com, that type of thing,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's like Match.com for therapists and clients. Then it morphed into this, journaling, habit tracking, AI insights into journaling. But the big one is the AI guides. I have 3 AI guides, and I've been working on these AI guides for 2 years now, and I've learned a lot. Like I said, it's just like that movie, Live, Die, Repeat, right? Um, and I started this whole thing on a WordPress website, with plugins, pulling in plugins, APIs, plugins, everything. And that was going pretty well, but it was still it was working. It really gave me a chance to build out my proof of concept, but it really gave me the ability to develop the 3 guides. So these 3 AI guides, Ranger, Chloe, and Sage. And they are uh, there are captive in there, so they're contained inside the platform. But the term escapes me, but they don't have access to the web. So it's not like going to ChatGPT and you say, "Hey, ChatGPT, I'm having," which people do all the time. "Hey, I'm having this issue with my son or with my spouse or whatever." And ChatGPT gives feedback and stuff, and it's trained a specific way, but it has access. It goes out to the web and it's pulling everything from the web. Whereas these AI agents, they're intelligent chatbots, right? They're programmed, but they're programmed specifically using scientific, clinical based, research based, and backed knowledge frameworks. So we're not just making stuff up, right? So, and we call that now our tactical knowledge framework, right? TKF. So there's all this information in there on, multi situational, where, so, and where the AI guide can refer to respond to what the client is writing. So, for example, Ranger is sort of you know, the veteran, sounds like sounds like a military guy, that kind of thing, because people respond to that, right? I want blunt, I want straightforward, blunt, no BS, that kind of thing, in my response. So that's how Ranger is. Chloe, much more emotional, touchy-feely, because some people are like, look, well, I want a little softer guide in presence in what I'm doing here. And then Sage is kind of in between. Sage is sort of, uh, not as touchy-feely, but, and people can try them. They can switch back and forth. But the main thing here is that the guide is there to respond when asked to. So, the thing that we learned is, when it comes to mental health, journaling has shown, just writing things down, right? Getting them back here where it's jumbled and everything in the back, and getting it to the front of our brain, right? This is where we really start to process things here. Back here it's just that's the RAM, right? And so getting it to the front part, and I'm really butchering Psychology 101, but that's how I see it. That's my visual. But getting it down on paper, so getting it from here onto paper is so therapeutic. Just writing it down and reading it and visualizing is so therapeutic. And so, then the next best thing is journaling, is getting your thoughts out, and then getting some, getting some insights, getting some response in terms of more questions and helping you work through those things. So for example, if you're journaling with Ranger and you say, "Hey Ranger, I had a really bad day today at work. I'm I'm really upset. Whatever it is, and or you don't even have to say Ranger. You write in your journal and say, today was a crappy day. I experienced these things. Ranger is trained to come back and say, Rod, that that's a lot to deal with today. I mean, and it's using sentiment analysis, right? Using language models to better understand, recognize sentiment, recognize the emotion that's coming through in the writing, and then respond, and then but not just say, "Oh, that's too bad. How's that make you feel?" It's more like, "Wow, that sucks. It sounds like it was a bad day. Was there any specific thing that really stands out to you?" So it starts to get the person to take where they're just like they're piling on themselves on their day, and maybe it was just one thing, but that made everything else seem bad the day. And it's like, then they go, well, my boss said this to me, and they didn't understand my communication skills aren't as good as they should be, so I couldn't express myself, and my boss got mad at me. And maybe Ranger will come back and say, "Oh, you know, do you think there's a different way that you might have handled it, right?" Or so it's this conversation that takes place, and and it might just be as simple as a person wants to write it down and vent and walk away. That's great. But now that information, that data is being captured within their profile. So, uh, when somebody gets to a point, uh, where so there's like crisis protocols, right, in the system. So I'm jumping around here, but I think it's important. We made sure to build in like hardcore crisis protocols. A person says, "Man, I'm really thinking about, you know, thinking about taking my life. I'm thinking, I just feel like there's no hope, right?" The crisis protocols kick in, and we've tested it and tested it and tested it. And then the AI guide says, "Look, I am not a therapist, but I am still here to help you process things. It really sounds like you're in a bad spot right now." It immediately is offering, you can call or text 988 Lifeline. You can, the Veterans Crisis. It gives all of these opportunities to get help, right? So it's constantly responding that way. And it's not going to let up until the person sort of walks away from it, right? Or the person says, "Hey, yeah, I was overreacted a little bit," that type of thing. Again, this is not therapy. None of this is meant to take the place of a therapist. It's meant to augment the relationship between the person entering into the conversation to getting to the therapist. So now the the AI guide may say, "Wow, really sounds like you've got some things going on here that maybe you need more professional guidance on. Would you be, uh, a therapist? There are therapists out there that practice, that specialize in post-traumatic stress disorder or trauma or this or that. Would you be interested in talking with one? Would you want me to help you connect with one?" And I say, "Sure, what the heck," right? It says, "Great." So now it's already built this profile on me through all my journaling, through our conversations, right? So it knows a lot more about me. And you use AI. I'm sure you probably are 10 times better at AI than I am. But it already understands my emotion, my sentiment, the way I write, the way I think. So in the background, it's already filtering through its list of therapists, right? So it knows Rod's outdoorsy, Rod's a veteran, Marine veteran, all these things. Those are points of contact, right? And points of information that in the background, maybe it's already looking for uh licensed therapists who specialize in veterans with PTSD or are outdoorsy or like working out or skiing or whatever it is, right? So now it starts asking these questions. It's got a 10-question model, and it's very conversational. It says, "Hey, can I ask you a few more questions?" Yeah. All right. Hey, what do you really want to get help with or work on? Well, put that down. Great. And then it just takes you through everything, including like, are you using insurance, who's your insurance company, cash pay, whatever it is. So again, it's asking, where do you live? Do you want virtual in person or virtual or either? Doesn't matter. So when you get done, it's filtered through all those therapists, and it even asks like time of day. Do you prefer mornings, afternoons, either, days of the week? Those types of things. So again, it's taking this giant list of therapists, right? We got 30,000 licensed professionals in the state of Washington, and it's filtering this down to, hey, look, I found, and then it uses a compatibility rating and score. And says, I found, it doesn't tell the client, hey, look, 94% match, but it's using that to say, look, I found 3 therapists or 2 or 4 therapists in your area that, match your, what you've asked for. And here are their profiles. Click on each profile, and then tell me which one you prefer, right? So you click on, and then that then makes the connection. And then there's a whole back end for therapists, right? So we have a therapist portal, and therapists can sign up and, and get their profiles on there. And they can choose it. They have to pay for a subscription, but they can choose to be matched with clients. And again, we just had our first, this is still young and still new. We just had our first organic match between a client and a therapist, like with no, hands off. And it was amazing. And it was one of the most exciting things on this project was seeing that organic match happen. So that's like me going, blah, but I'm so excited about this because the feedback from users has been awesome. It's, the people that are truly using it, are finding benefit from it. I use it. I think I've got access to Chat GPT, Claude, you name it, Gemini. I have very expensive subscriptions to, those things because I use it in my work, build out everything. Um, but I definitely use, and I use Ranger just because he speaks my language. I'm a Marine, so I like blunt and to the point.
Yeah.
Um, but I love it. It's got the habit track. I use the habit tracking in it as my habit tracker app. There's goal setting. What I'm really proud of is the tactical knowledge framework. So we've been building and we continue to add this framework of knowledge and really it's been focused around veterans and their families. And now we're starting to feed in first responder and healthcare profiles into it too. But it's basically different things on, it's like if you had a one pager on, hey, look, here are some ways for veterans. Hey, here's some, if you're dealing with a housing issue, here's some here's some things that you can do to get housing and your veteran service. I mean, we're doing all kinds of things, but here's the thing I'm really excited about. And I know I haven't breathed and you haven't said a word, but you asked. So
Yeah. Yeah.
the thing that excites me right now is what we're experimenting with is, do you know what voice first is? So with Chat GPT on your phone, you can actually have a conversation with Chat GPT. So you talk to it and it listens and it responds back and it talks to you like a human, right? It
Yeah.
tries.
Yeah.
We're actually working on that. It's in beta. We got stuck a little bit because of, the uh it it takes a lot, and the technology is fantastic, but it takes a lot to get it to where it works like it's supposed to, because I don't have open AI money or all of their engineers, so it's a little bit slower, but it's working pretty cool. And then the other thing that we've got going is I'm leaping ahead, which is virtual an actual virtual therapy den. So using like the Meta 3 goggles. And this has been a vision since I started this, which is, wouldn't it be great if Rod could be in his office? And This is great what we're doing here. I mean, the technology that we have to do this is fantastic. But wouldn't it be great if I was sitting in my chair with my VR goggles on and I'm talking with my therapist who's in Seattle, but we're sitting in the den that I designed, where maybe we're in an outdoor setting, we're in a clearing, there's a lake. I'm sitting in my camp chair, and my therapist is sitting there too, right? And you're having this conversation. So what happens is our body mechanics we relax, right? So because we're relaxed, we're more likely to share a little bit more about what's going on. But the thing is, we're more open to receive messages and communication. So think about that. I mean, you know, it they're using VR in I call it immersion therapy, but if there's a different name for it, but somebody phobias, right? And they're using it with children very successfully. So like children who are afraid of dogs or spider. I'm afraid of spiders. I'm not a child, but I'm afraid of spiders, but actually it's exposure therapy, that's what it calls. So like, fear of flying, right? It's the same thing. They put on you get on, you walk down the thing onto the plane, just people doing that part, right? Puts them into full panic, but actually getting on a virtual airplane, sitting there, taking on the whole thing, right? So it's already being used, but I'm talking about using this for like to be to expand the network of therapy, right? So that you can have access to a once we get once we break through the state boundary barriers, and they're doing that right now. There's a pact out there happening. So if licensed in Washington, I have to do a few things, but I can also practice in these specific states. I have to go through their process. That's happening. That not used to be that way. I mean, used to be you have to go get licensed in that state if you want to practice it, and you have to be there. You have to be located there to do business there. Well, now that's changing now, right? So I'm just trying to expand it, and I'm just focused on, I'm trying to remember the name of the book. About the SAS playbook is a phenomenal playbook. But one of the things he says in there is, establish your beachhead, right? What's your beachhead? Who are your clients? Who are you going to focus on? Don't expand beyond that. And so our beachhead is um veterans, first responders, healthcare workers, and their families. So we're sticking to that until we master that, and then we'll go beyond that.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for your service to other people who have served our country. I think that's really, really honorable.
I
Uh,
appreciate that very much. Yeah.
yeah, and I really like the idea that you're talking about with the VR goggles and stuff, because then I could see that making people who are going to therapy, they get to control their environment in a way that makes them even more comfortable with the situation of going to therapy, because that can be a very scary and uncomfortable thing, talking to somebody who you might not really know and exposing your deep insecurities or fears or things you're working through. And I have a lot of friends who are um, veterans and first responders, and they deal with a lot of brutal stuff all the time. And like, yeah, so,
It's
some of the stories they've told me, it's like, man, that is a really hard thing to deal with. I don't even know where to begin with that. So that, yeah,
Well, first of all, I appreciate that you're uh willing to listen to them. That's so important and critical, just listening. Um and you don't have to know the right thing to say. Usually if somebody knows they're just being listened to sincerely, that's very helpful. So thank you for doing that. um you know i uh, uh, I just personally know, I know too many people who have taken their lives and or who thought about it. Um, I don't tell this story. I don't want to get sideways on what your goal here is, but I don't tell this story, but not many people know this story. But I think it's time for me to tell my story and so I guess we'll start here. But there was a time, several years ago where as a middle-aged guy, was dealing with a lot of stuff. I'm a husband, father, but I was probably at my lowest and I mean really at my lowest. And I was making plans. I was making plans to take my own life. I mean, everything, looking up the insurance to make sure the insurance was going to be okay. Looking, everything, writing a letter, making sure all this stuff, right? Literally making plans. And nobody knew. People knew I was sort of struggling, but nobody asked if I was struggling with my mental health, if I was, at that place in my life fairly well, but I was at that point, and then something happened, I call it divine intervention, I'll be honest, I feel like I felt the presence of God and that stopped me.
Mm,
Um, and but there wasn't anybody there. I didn't know where to turn. There are people out there that'll help. I had no idea where to turn, right? And so I can't tell you how many stories I've heard like that from veterans and first responders. And again, I just know way too my mom killed herself when I was 15, right? So my experience with suicide goes all the way back to that, right? I just know way too many people that have taken their own lives. And so when you focus on the veteran and first responder community, I mean, the need is out there. Children, men, women, everything. But I got to start somewhere. Goal is one life.
mm,
Just save one life.
mhm,
Okay,
mhm,
we save that life, then we'll go save another one. That's it. That's what this is. So, that's why I'm bootstrapping and I'm not out looking for investors yet to help. I've been able to, I've been blessed with the ability to bootstrap it on my own and finance this project on my own. And at some point when I go, if I want to scale, I'm going to have to do something. But so far so good. It's paying for itself, sort of, so
mhm.
that's good. I didn't do this to make a bunch of money. I did this to solve a problem. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that, you nailed it though. I mean, people need to feel uh heard and listened to. So we need more people like you out there who are willing to listen. Yeah, seriously. It's just
Well, thank you.
that connection, man. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and coming from the other side of it, it's in 2019, one of my good buddies took his own life, and he was a veteran. And it was one of those things too, where, and I don't know if it's just a part of military culture or if it was just something he was struggling with internally, but he didn't want to talk about it. And the thing that pains me the most about that is he was somebody I saw every single day. He would come over and hang out. I was living with some other guys at the time, I was a young bachelor, and he'd come over and hang out like every single day. And the day he took his life, I was headed out the door to go work, and I saw him pull up in the front of the house, and I was walking out the back door to get in my car, and I was like, "Oh, there's Kyle. He'll be here when I get back." And
Yeah.
then I was in a town adjacent to where we were living and got a text message, and it was awful. And it turns out that he had showed up to leave a bunch of stuff for all of us.
Oh,
And
yeah. Oh
still to
man.
this day sometimes it's I
Hmm.
wonder if I would have stopped and talked to him if things would have been different. But yeah, so what
Wow.
kind
Yeah.
of advice, since you've been kind of in that situation, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who has a family member or friend who's going through that? Like, what would you suggest that people like us do to help?
Yeah. I think that I've been through some really good training over the past several years on, peer support, critical incident, stress management, things like that. Um, and it all and all of the training and just input from professionals is the same thing as number one is don't be afraid to ask. As a matter of fact, I had a friend the other day who she just went through a peer support training, and I noticed this. "Hey, that's awesome. Hey, we're just, she said, I would never have thought that just ask, that it was okay to ask somebody if you're worried to say, are, are you considering taking your own life? I mean, but I don't think starting there necessarily unless you're but so the main thing is talking with them, listening to them, people who go through whether they've gone through something traumatic or you just see them struggling, I just think ask them, say, "Are you okay? Do you wanna talk about it?" Just let them talk about it. And while they're talking, I mean, just listening, and then making sure that they, have a way they've got some positive right? There's all kinds of coping. There's bad coping and good coping, right? And but how are they coping with what's going on? And if they're talking to you about it, what I've found, and I mean, I've had some conversations with people that I was so worried about them, right? Afterwards, I mean, kept checking on them until they were like, "Stop, I'm good. Stop asking me. I'm good. I'm okay." I'm great with that. If they tell me to leave them alone, I may or may not. But so I think just asking them uh how they're doing, what's going on, and then letting them tell you what's going on, letting them talk. Um and and you don't have to know how to respond other than just let them know you love and you care about them. But also gauging, if you can, I mean, do they how are they coping other than this? What are some other things? Maybe ask them, what can you do? What can you do to, are there some other things that you can do to get through this? What can I do? How can I help you? Um, and Brad, it may come down to, literally walking them, calling for them to get them the help they need, get them on a line, get them on the, 988 lifeline, or, something like that, or into, an ER, calling 911, whatever it takes, right, to save their life. But I think being a good friend and listening is absolutely the great start, and asking them if they're okay, and then following up. And
Hmm.
so I don't know if that helps or not, but I think that just making sure they've connected with the help they need. So I do this thing with, I do a buddy check, right? And
Hmm.
I call it a radio check because that's what we used to do, way out in the field in the Marines, right? Is if you were a radio operator, 2 o'clock in the morning, it's like radio check over, right? It's just, yep, radio's working, we're good, that type of thing. So then I have my buddies out there, what I call my battle buddies. We weren't in battle together, anything like that, but it just, hey, radio check over, how's it going? And we just check in with each other and stuff like that. And just that makes a difference.
Hmm. Good.
That's Rod Price's book of, no, just some things that I've, experienced and insight that I've gained from, my time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
So, um, to bring it a little bit back to tech,
Yeah.
what do you do with the North app and stuff to make sure that the responses are appropriate? Because
Yeah.
like you said earlier, with AI, with these large language models, garbage in equals garbage out, and when you're dealing with something so sensitive, how do you ensure that the responses are safe and actually helpful?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And that's the thing that if there's one thing that keeps me up at night, and that would, with the North app, that would be it. We, from the very beginning, there's a gentleman here in town in Spokane, is one of the what I would call there's a couple of godfathers, OGs of AI, and he's one of them. And so very early on, and I'd had this advice before from somebody, but I didn't quite understand it. And very early on, Larry, you know, when you go into your fine tuning, when you're creating your AI, your chatbot, right? You're using you're using a chat GPT, or using, different, you're using an AI program as your chatbot, right? I'm not smart enough to develop one from scratch, right? So that's not my, so but he said, when you're in fine tuning, and what you're talking about is fine tuning. So you're going in there and you're making sure uh, it it's programmed. So when you instruct it, you program it. You're saying it's these if then, right? So if this happens, then do this, right? So if this sentiment is detected, then do this, or answer, access this. So as I said in the beginning, the advice Larry gave me is you've got to make sure you're in a completely enclosed and locked down system. Your chatbots cannot be, you can't just use chat GPT that's going onto the web, right? I mean, you don't want that. So that's number one. That's the first thing to do, is an enclosed system. So the chatbot is only using data, information, language, responses that you've programmed to it, right? That you've given it. So you're fine tuning, but you don't have to write everything, code everything in. Your code is making it respond to what we call these tactical knowledge frameworks, is what our name is for it, where it's, you've got relationship problems, employment, all these various categories of things, so that it says, oh, I'm detecting a relationship question or issue or whatever. And it's it's got its own data in there that we programmed it, and it's learning. And so it's learning too, though, right? So it's
Yeah.
constantly machine learning. It's constantly building its own data in there from this. So that's how you start, and then and there was something that I think you and I may have talked about this online before, is about, this kid that used ChatGPT as its suicide coach, right? As a suicide coach,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That scared the hell out of me. Okay, that scared me bad, and I went, "Whew, okay, don't need that." And so, um, I I immediately started working on a firewall between coaching and therapy. So you will not, my AI guides will not act as a therapist, right? They're they're utilizing some therapy models, right? But you can't get the AI guide to say, okay, I want you to take me through an EMDR session, right? So very clear about that. Uh, EMDR itself, is a protocol with therapists. They have to be trained, certified in it. And you can go out to YouTube and learn how to do EMDR on yourself, but it's not recommended that way, because EMDR therapy is one of those things where you need to have a trained professional, because if you really do EMDR like it's supposed to, it unlocks things that have been locked away, and you need somebody there to kind of help you through as you unlock that stuff and process it. So there's things like that. So we drew a firewall there, and we're constantly testing it. So I have people out there testing it for me, right? I have this, my best friend growing up, I mean, literally is a genius. I love him because he likes to play mind games, that's part of his deal. But I say, hey, I need you to break this. Go out. Here's what I'm looking for. Break it. Try to break it. Right. And so he's always good about saying, all right, I went in. So for example, we found a weakness, which was, that he started using Ranger, and he started commenting to Ranger, "I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to a female, a softer version, right?"
Hmm.
And Ranger's coming back saying, coming back the response, he said his response was like terrible. He's like, I wanted to talk to Chloe and he couldn't get me to Chloe. And I said, well, that's because I didn't program it that way, right? It wasn't you got to go. He says, but why can't Ranger get me to Chloe? I said, well, that's a good question. I think what we can do is go in and program Ranger to to recognize when somebody is saying, "Hey, look, I don't think it's working out between us. Can I choose a different guide?" And it's literally just as easy as you click a button. When you're in there, you can say you can choose it, you can change your guide like that.
Mm-hmm.
Daryl didn't. So, oops, sorry, just called him out. Maybe you can bleep that out. My buddy, he won't be listening to this anyways. He he didn't see the button up there, right? So then now Ranger would say, "Oh yeah, you could change guides anytime. There's a button that you can click in this window to change your guide right now if that's what you want to do, right?" So things like that. That doesn't really answer your question. What I think you're more talking about is that stuff that 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 firewall of language of saying, of practicing therapy. My 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 vision would be that um there are AI therapy programs out there, and they were developed by psychologists and things like that, but that still scares me because I haven't found in the multitude of AI models out there that I've been working with, I haven't found any that aren't flawed, right? All of them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so this really, we've tried to keep this firewall of more coaching and guiding, right? Not to say, "Hey, I think you have PTSD." They don't do that, right? If I text in and say, "Hey, uh, hey, Chloe, I think I have PTSD." Chloe might say, "Well, post-traumatic stress syndrome is blah, 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 blah. Why do you think you have this?" Right. But it's not going to say, "Well, I think you do too." I mean, but we're constantly testing it because you have to be careful. Right. So we're going in and trying to break it, weekly to say, to figure that out, because that is the thing that scares me. And I would say is probably not infallible at this point, but we tried to create enough of a firewall so that we don't cross any lines. That was the big one for me, is that I didn't want to cross the therapy threshold. That's illegal, don't want it to be illegal, but I also think I'm trying to I'm trying to create this ecosystem that people can use. They may never need a therapist, but they like, "Hey, I like journaling and having kind of a guide kind of help me unpack that." Like dream interpretation, right? You can you can put, "Hey, I had this dream, it's a recurring dream," and the guide will kind of help you walk through. It's not going to say, "Well, this is what's wrong with you," or "This is why." It's just going to guide you through where you go, "Oh, maybe that's why I'm having this recurring dream." But but it's really there for as a stopgap, right? And a first line of defense, really, but then to connect those who need therapy or want therapy with a therapist. And you don't have to go through the whole thing. You can literally log on and say, click on "Help me find a therapist," and you can just start there too. So I don't know
Sure,
if I
but
answer your question or not.
maybe some of those people who are a little bit apprehensive about therapy or the stigma around it, maybe these chatbots can help warm them up to the idea.
Men are terrible, right?
Oh yeah.
We're really bad at expressing ourselves, in a positive way, anyways. And and veterans and first responders are worse, right? So, veterans, especially combat veterans, which we have a lot of now. And I don't know if you saw my podcast with Henry. It was a um, oh, or Harry Turner, not Harry Turner. So Harry Turner is a British soldier or veteran, just yeah, and Amazon did a documentary. It was a award-winning documentary on him called Wildcat. I recommend everybody watch the Amazon documentary Wildcat. It's about, so Harry is this guy that he was, at age 18, went into the military, went straight to Afghanistan, and the Middle East, in combat, in war, saw the worst of the worst of the worst, came back really messed up, right? As a lot of them do, and tried to take his own life, right? So, but this documentary is all about, he actually helped rescue and raise and save the very first ocelot from kitten to adult. The first one documented deal over in the rainforest. And so, anyways, it's a great documentary, but in talking with him, it's kind of the same thing. You suppress that. You don't tell anybody that stuff. And so a combat veteran may have done stuff in the heat of battle that was necessary. And people can debate whether it's necessary or not for years, but in the heat of the battle, it was necessary that they do what they did.
Yeah.
But they but when they're out and they're now in civilian world, they're not going to tell anybody about that because of fear of being judged, right? Even their therapist, they're not ready to go in, hey, Dr. So and so, I did this and I'm deeply I all these feelings of shame and conflict and I dealt with that all the time. It's like, man, I might have to take somebody's life. I'm a I'm a peace guy, right? But I became a Marine, right? And
Yeah.
I was trained to kill people, and luckily for me, I didn't get to that point, but there's this conflict that goes, there should be this
Yeah.
constant conflict that
Yeah.
goes on with somebody. Anyways, so, but you know, they won't tell anybody. But if they start journaling about it, it's their journal. They're not, they're not sharing it with a human because they don't trust other humans. But if they're sharing, they're journaling about it. Now they've got, AI is non-judgmental, right? There's AI, the computers don't judge, right? And I guess you can program an AI, you know, bot to judge, but it still is, not the same. So, but if they open up there, that might open the door to them talking with an actual therapist, and getting the help they need.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really cool. Um, we're running a little bit up on
Oh,
time,
yeah, yeah,
but
whew,
I, if you have a little bit more time, I would love to hear about the
yeah,
book that you're writing.
oh, yeah. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, so Carrie McCarter is my partner in my third venture, which she's a licensed clinical social worker, registered nurse, health coach, performance coach, things like that. She's an amazing human being. We started working together. I was consulting for her. She was going out, opening her own practice, and so we started working on that. And then one thing led to another. We were talking about doing some things, and then she said, "Hey, would you do this with me?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd do that with you." Anyways, so we started planning this whole thing of performance, helping people, performance improvement. And one thing led to another, and we started working. We said, well, we should maybe turn this into a program, and help people who are try. So my background is in coaching, facilitation, adult education. That's what I was. My degree, my undergrad is in adult ed and training development, and so I did a bunch of that. And so I have all the stuff that I'd created over the years. And so I had this platform just waiting, not knowing, right? I had all this stuff, and it just opened a door to us. We said, well, let's do peak performance. And so as we started working on this platform, we said, well, let's have a podcast. So we started a podcast, and we've interviewed people like Harry Turner, and Carrie and I just get on there. We just do what you and I are doing. We just talk about subjects and stuff. But it's really about this this platform that I came up with is called LEAP. LEAP is an acronym for Lead, Empower, act, and perform. And, and it's this cycle that a person can take themselves through is like lead with an inspiring vision, right? A clarifying vision that's built around your goals and what you want to do. And then you empower that vision with an actual plan. So you come out, you build a plan for how you're going to get to that vision, achieve that vision. And then the A is action. That's where you start taking action steps. And then as you do those things, you start to build habits, you start to build those things in, you get to the P as you're performing. To me, performing is kind of like, hey, I'm in the groove, I'm in the zone, I'm doing great. And then we have what we call initiating new growth. So when you get to there, now you go push yourself out of your comfort zone and do it again. So as we were going through this, we're talking, I said, I think we have a book here. We have all this stuff. So then, and Carrie's always good for, yeah, let's do it, And so we started writing this book, and, we both know multiple authors who have published and been published, and so we've gotten some great advice and input. We just started writing, and we've got about 12 chapters into it. We're trying to keep it like 12 to 13 chapters, so we've got this really a lot in there. It's organized, so now we're kind of going through the editing process, and we're adding some more things. And so, but the book is really I don't think we're going to make a bunch of money on it. It's really a companion guide to the work that we're doing. We want it to be a handbook, a manual for people where it's filled with stories. We're both mountaineers. We love the climbing metaphor, the mountain metaphor, so it's got a lot of mountain stuff in it, but the challenge of mountains. But I think mountaineering is a metaphor for life, right? It just is. And but it just kind of takes people through that whole model, that LEAP model, the behavior change cycle. We start with that as getting from the I don't want to change, I don't need to change, whatever, to I I should make some changes in my life. I want to, I'm going to, show me how. So that's kind of so the book is really about just taking people through that framework, and if it helps them achieve their goals or vision, then that's great.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
There you go. Yeah.
Any closing thoughts, and where can people find you?
Oh, man. Well, let's see. Oh, wow. My main consulting company is Ascend, and so I've got Ascend Consulting and Ascend Energy Group, and that's on that side. But
Along with the mountaineering theme.
the mountaineering, oh, totally. Everything's
Yeah.
about mountaineering and climbing with me. Absolutely. And peak, right?
Yeah.
So, I think the main thing is I want people to go try the North app, mynorthapp.com. Go just give it a shot. And then the website for the company is Ithos Wellness, Ithos wellness.com. But the North app, mynorthapp.com, too easy. It looks, you download it. It feels and looks like an app, but give it a shot. You don't have to be a veteran or first responder. I want people to test it. It's still free right now for everybody to test and use. I want it to stay that way, but we want feedback, but get it into the hands of a veteran or first responder or healthcare worker. Let them try it out. It might help. So
right on.
Thank you for asking, by the way. And by the way, thanks for doing this. I'm really glad you turned your podcast into an interview style too. I think that I love the other stuff that you do too, though. I think that's really helpful. So
well, I might continue. I might pick your brain on that after this, because I have some ideas. But yeah. Anyway, thank you everyone who listened and watched. You can find this podcast on YouTube and Spotify for now. And yeah, thank you, Rod, for joining us.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.